loud and clear. Are we coming through? Head her up a little bit there, I'd say. Oh, that a bit better? Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, here we go. 12:30 meeting's about to start. I was worried there for a bit. The stream box, the video player, actually wasn't popping up. So I didn't think it was actually going to happen. Down below it talks about like private sessions of the committee are not streamed publicly. I was like, hey, Vickers never told us it wasn't private, but thank God it's not. So yeah, let's hit the play button there anyway. It's going to be telling me it'll start shortly. Boom, there we go. Alright, let's hit the link out there to a couple of people. I think I got the link out over on X, but better do it on the Facebook too. Boom. Shout out to whoever's out there in the hot box. Anyway, we got one person watching. Curious, I suppose I have to ask, how many people watching this stream, watching this video playback, would have actually went and watched the Oireachtas committee over on Oireachtas TV? I'm just curious how many extra eyes I might be actually bringing to this. Do let me know in the hot box or the comments. I suppose while we're quickly waiting there, there was a piece came out there, hit that over on the X. Boom, we hit that, but I shared a post up there earlier. There we go, boom. So there was a man, but I suppose before we go to that, the actual post, this is what the post was about. It was over on the Facebook. On Garda Síochána put up a post as part of an ongoing investigation into the sale and supply of controlled drugs. Gardaí seized approximately 620,000 worth of cannabis and 70,000 euro worth of cocaine on Saturday the 1st of November, which was a couple of days ago. The operation was carried out by the Dublin Crime Response Team, who searched a private residence in the Dublin metropolitan region, the northern part of that. This search resulted in the recovery of the 31 kilos of cannabis herb valued at 620, so that's 20,000 kilos they value it at, and 1 kilo of cocaine, which they value at an incredible 70,000 euro. It's crazy. The total value of the drugs combined was 690,000, and in addition to 6,605 euro in cash. That €5 is very important, isn't it? A man aged in his 30s was arrested on Sunday in connection with the seizure and is currently being held in the Dublin Garda station under the provisions of Section 2 of the Dublin Trafficking Act 96. The drug seized will be forwarded to the Forensic Science Ireland FSI for analysis. Great work they're doing up there, isn't it? But this is it, like 31 kilos of cannabis, and I know there was a kilo of cocaine in there too, but I think all that really proves is that the prohibition of drugs is a bigger gateway to drugs than cannabis. They always try to tell you that cannabis is a gateway to drugs, but really when you have cannabis being sold alongside of cocaine, then the doorway is open, you know, that gateway is now opened, and it's not going to be the cannabis doing it. It's probably going to be the dealer saying, hey, I've got this nice snow there by for you, here, I have a sample, look, take it out with you there tonight, try it out and see how you get on, you know. And before you know it, like, feck, you're spending queer money there on coke, you know. 20 grand for a kilo of cannabis, 70 for a kilo of coke. Lads to be cutting it with all sorts of stuff. What's that one there? The like T-Dex, is it? Where they mix it with that? The stuff you rub on a baby's gums. It makes them go numb. Helps with the teething.
Now in public session, and please to use the raise hand function if members wish to contribute.
But before we start on that, I just want to finish off with saying, look, there was a man robbed of his wallet and his car at knife point in Rosscray the other day. He was waiting to collect his kids, and this happened in the broad daylight, and it was outside of the Garda station in Rosscray. Which had no Gardaí inside it. So it's absolutely ridiculous. The Gardaí post here about keeping people safe, and I say from what? Cannabis? So yeah, stop wasting invaluable Garda time, and that was tagged there to the current Minister for Justice.
Mr. Loughlin, GPA Member, Westmeath football player. From the Irish Homeless Street Leagues, Mr. Kevin Leavy, Board Member, Ms. Frances Kavanagh, Director. From Sport Ireland, Ms. Mary van Lieshout, Director of Participation, Ethics and Integrity and Research. Mr. Phelim Macken, Manager with the Limerick Sports Partnership. From the Brace Community Response Ballymun and the Boxing Clever Programme, Mr. Karl O'Brien, Coordinator and Access Intervention Brace Community Response Coordinator, Boxing Clever Programme Ballymun, and Ms. Trina Bourne, Recovery Community Development Officer, Coordinator of Boxing Clever Recovery Academy. Our agenda items today are to engage on the topic of addiction, sport and well-being. And before we begin, just a note on privilege. All witnesses and members are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that you should not criticise or make charges against any person or entity by name or in such a way as to make him or her identifiable or otherwise engage in a speech that might be regarded as damaging to the good name of the person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you'll be directed to discontinue your remarks. It is imperative that you comply with any such direction. I would like to remind members of the constitutional requirement that in order to participate in public meetings, members must be physically present within the confines of Leinster House complex. Members of the committee attending remotely must do so from within the precincts of Leinster House. This is due to the constitutional requirement that in order to participate in public meetings, members must be physically present within the confines of the place where Parliament has chosen to sit. In this regard, I would ask any member partaking via MS Teams prior to making their contribution to the meeting that you confirm that you are on the grounds of Leinster House. So on the engagement, the topic of addiction and sports and wellbeing, I'd like to once again welcome all our witnesses to begin engagement on addiction, sport and wellbeing. All of the opening statements have been circulated to the members of the committee and will be published to the Oireachtas website after this session is agreed. As agreed, we'll limit each opening statement to 5 minutes. This will allow plenty of time for questions and answers. I am conscious that there will be a wide range of issues with the subject of discussion today. If necessary, further and more detailed information on certain issues can be sent to the clerk of the committee for circulation to members. So once again, I'm going to welcome our witnesses. Just to say, members will be in and out of the course of the proceedings. We have a lot of different places where we have to be here. So our first contributor is Ms. Jennifer Rogers to give her opening statement on behalf of the Gaelic Players Association. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Chair, members of the committee, the Gaelic Players Association welcomes the opportunity to speak to the Oireachtas Joint Committee on Drugs Use on the topic of addiction, sports and wellbeing. My name is Jennifer Rogers. I am the Head of Player Development and Wellbeing with the GPA, and as the representative body for over 4,000 current and a growing number of former inter-county Gaelic Games players, the GPA's mission is to enable players to balance the huge demands placed on them with the opportunity, support and investment required for them to be at their best on and off the pitch. Since our merger with the Women's GPA in 2020, we've operated under 4 key pillars: player representation, player welfare, player development and equality, guided by our values of leadership, care, ambition and innovation. Addiction and substance misuse are complex, multifactorial issues that can profoundly impact both athletic performance and personal well-being. The GPA believes that sport can be both a protective factor and a potential pressure point in this context, and our approach is grounded in prevention, education, early intervention and holistic well-being support for all of our members. Elite amateur athletes face unique pressures, physical, psychological and social, that can contribute to vulnerability around substance use. These include performance and identity pressures, transition challenges, cultural factors and stigma and silence. Research highlights that while rates of illicit drug use among elite athletes are not necessarily higher than the general population, the consequences can be more severe, given public scrutiny, sponsorship pressures and the influence athletes have as role models. The GPA's approach to player wellbeing, including addiction awareness and support, is grounded in a proactive, player-centred model. Through the GPA's BO360 Player Development Programme, the GPA provides one-to-one individualised personal development support to players under 4 key areas: dual career, transition, wellbeing and life skills. Mental health first aid training is available to GPA members and is aimed at increasing mental health literacy and confidence in providing support to others. The GPA collaborate with experts in addiction services and accredited counsellors to ensure evidence-based support and messaging, and our education begins early. We target younger inter-county players and new panel members who are beginning their senior inter-county journeys through our annual induction rookie camps. All inter-county players are required to complete mandatory anti-doping education to raise awareness and support their decision-making. Recreational drugs, including cannabis and cocaine, are prohibited, and any player is subject to testing in season. The GPA provides a range of confidential support services for its members, and the GPA strongly values the role we can play in addressing wellbeing addiction issues through partnership and advocacy. GPA members bravely share their own personal stories around substance misuse and addiction in the media and with fellow players to raise awareness, reduce stigma and promote help seeking to those who need it. The GPA works closely with the GAA's Community and Health Department and external agencies to promote positive mental health, particularly at underage and club level. An example of this is in November ahead of the Game Mental Health Literacy Programme. Through this programme, current and former inter-county players deliver workshops to young people, their parents and coaches in GAA clubs. The programme, in which we partner with the GAA in November, has reached over 10,000 people across the island of Ireland since its commencement in 2023. In conclusion, the GPA believes that sport can be a powerful platform for positive change in how society views and addresses many social issues, including addiction. By raising awareness, equipping athletes and with knowledge, resilience and access to support, we can reduce harm and model healthy, balanced lifestyles for future generations. Loughlin is a current Westmeath footballer. He was recently named on the Tailteann Cup Team of the Year and co-captained his club, the Downs, to a Westmeath Senior County Championship title a few weeks ago. Luke has bravely shared his personal story with the GAA communities and the wider public, and he'll now share his own personal experience with the committee.
Morning. My name is Luke Loughlin. I'm a current member of Westmeath football team and also an active member of the GPA. But the main reason why I'm here today is I'm currently in recovery from alcohol and substance abuse. I'm going to briefly share my own experience with addiction and how I've been able to turn my life around for the better. From birth, I've had no relationship with my biological father. As a 30-year-old man, that sentence does not carry any weight or leave any marks. But as a child, I always felt I was missing something. I struggled in my childhood and more so my teens with the feelings of trust, abandonment, not being good enough and constantly looking for validation or attention. Ultimately, I could never be myself. At 14, I tried alcohol for the first time with my friends, and the feeling that it gave me confidence, allowed me to be someone else, and was able to take me out of my own head. And I've never got it again as good since. For the next few years, my behaviour continued to get worse. I left school at 16. I was out drinking and gambling most weekends and started to experience with drugs such as pills and cocaine. Sport always seemed to be the only release of where I felt good about myself without having to drink or take drugs. My family had recognised there were issues, but every time they brought anything up, I would play it off or I would go to some sort of therapy and just lie. As an adult, I tried everything apart from going to get help. I emigrated to America, I joined the army, I've been back to college, but everywhere I went, my problems and those feelings always followed me. I was blinded by my addiction and couldn't see the damage I was doing to myself and the hurt I was bringing to my family, as they just wanted to see me well. I pushed a lot of people away that tried to help me. As years went by, I spiralled out of control. I rode off 2 cars. I'm very lucky to be alive and not to have hurt someone else. Could not hold down a job and was dropped from Westmeath panel numerous times. A video also circulated of me passed out on the side of a train tracks. I started to develop psychosis, and a real low point was feeling that suicide was my only option. In 2021, my lovely mother told me that she couldn't do this anymore. Even though she loved me, she had 3 other children that she had to take care of, and it had been 10 years. And if I didn't finally go to treatment, we had to cut ties. So she contacted the GPA and they got me into treatment in Coomera straight away. In treatment, I was fully able to focus on myself without any outside distractions. To be able to talk about your problems without judgment, have someone who understands, listen and help see you a different way is ultimately what helped me change. Now, it was not easy all the time, but anything worth doing never is. In there, I started to train and exercise, and this became a massive part of my recovery. I was equipped with the tools to deal with problems that I might potentially face. I suppose it's fitting my case officer was Jenny at the time, who is here with me today. She also visited me in Coomera. As I finished my time in Coomera, I was conscious that my recovery was #1 focus in life. It gave me a chance to start again and to try and make amends. Ultimately, it gave me a chance to be a better person, but this process was one day at a time. When I was 1 year sober, Westmeath won the Tailteann Cup, and part of that team, I did an interview about my football and sobriety. I could not believe the amount of people that reach out and struggled with similar issues as me, and from that moment on, I have used my life to try and help others. I now work as a games promotion officer for the GA, and I do talks and workshops on alcohol and substance abuse. Through my social media, working with kids in schools, and continue to represent Westmeath in football, I have been able to create a life that my family, my community can be proud of. In a way I wouldn't change any of it, as made me the person I am today. A lot of people have helped me in my life, and I will always be in debt, but instead of paying them back, I tried to pay it forward and set a good example for the young people who watched me every weekend. On this journey that I'm on, I cannot emphasise how important the supports are, especially from the GPA in my case. From struggling with my mental health and helping me with my personal development, the work that goes on behind the scenes. Without these amazing people like me might never have got the help they needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions when it comes to the members. Thank you. Our next witness is Mr. Kevin Leavy to give his opening statement on behalf of the Irish Homeless Street Leagues.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. The Irish Homeless Street Leagues has had a profound effect on people impacted by addiction and social isolation since its inception in 2004. It has successfully helped individuals develop positive and lasting relationships within their communities, harnessing the transformative power of sport as a catalyst for change. At the heart of our mission is the belief that every person has the potential to rebuild their life. Through sport, we empower individuals facing adversity, such as homelessness, addiction and mental health challenges, to cultivate a renewed sense of purpose and self-worth. Participation in our leagues not only enhances physical health, but also nurtures essential life skills, fosters communication and teamwork that extend well beyond the pitch. The ripple effect of our work is significant. When we uplift individuals, we also uplift their families, communities and society. Our players, people who have battled addiction, have experienced homelessness, are refugees, have been involved in the criminal justice system, are long-term unemployed, members of the traveller community or other marginalised groups, experience improved self-esteem and a renewed sense of purpose. They become advocates for change, serving as role models to younger generations and spreading hope throughout their communities. Some players go on to become coaches with the Street Leagues. The Irish Homeless Street League's commitment to inclusion, respect and teamwork creates an environment where every participant feels valued and empowered. We build a community where success stories inspire others, reinforcing the idea that with the right support, anyone can overcome their challenges. Sport plays a crucial role in helping socially isolated people build social capital by providing a platform for personal development and social connections. Through participation in team sports, individuals can build confidence, foster community and teamwork, develop life and leadership skills, enhance physical and mental health, make choices that empower them, create opportunities, improve communication, develop structure and routine, practice conflict resolution, strengthen resilience, and improve empathy and respect. These skills are not only valuable in sports, but also translate into various aspects of personal and professional life, contributing to overall growth as well as increasing recovery and social capital. 2025 has seen a significant growth in the number of leagues that the Street Leagues oversee, with our 10 evening leagues scattered across Dublin, Longford, Limerick and Cork, complemented by 10 new nationwide community street leagues in Dublin, Dundalk, Drogheda and Galway. These community leagues are run in partnership with numerous agencies such as Merchants Quay Ireland, Coolmine, Chrysalis Project, Frontline Recovery, Salvation Army, Louth Healthy Eating, Galway Sports Partnership, Compass and Docus Prison. We plan to engage with more prisons in 2026. We cater for approximately 350 players from over 23 nationalities. The gender split is approximately 85% male to 15% female across an age range of 18 to 50. Each year we host our All-Ireland finals in Tallaght, from which a squad of men and women are selected to represent Ireland at the yearly Homeless World Cup. This is the highlight of our programme. It is a target for all players and selection is not solely on football ability. Mindset is as important. The player must have developed enough resilience to be able to handle the pressure of competing at an international tournament and must have shown a commitment to the team. Successfully competing at an international level requires the player to have developed confidence and emotional regulation skills. This growth must be partnered with a clear commitment to the team. There have been cases of players coming back year after year in the hope of being chosen, and we believe this reflects positively on their attitude and highlights their commitment to the programme. Players receive an official Ireland cap from the FAI, and 85 to 88% of participants successfully build positive connections in their communities as well as wider society through various means such as finding a job, staying clear of addiction, returning to education, reconnecting with family, etc. Recovery from adversity is fundamentally a journey towards rediscovering and rebuilding a meaningful life, which is why meaning, purpose and belonging are essential, not optional elements. Feeling disconnected or without direction can keep people stuck in situations they would rather change. Finding purpose, cultivating a sense of meaning and genuine belonging addresses the deep isolation and loneliness that result from social exclusion. Connecting people to a supportive community like a team where they are valued not despite their past, but for the full, hopeful potential of their future self. In conclusion, the Irish Homeless Street Leagues is not just a sports initiative. It's a movement dedicated to healing and rebuilding lives through the power of sport. Together we can continue to transform lives, foster resilience and create a society that embraces and uplifts every individual. Thank you for your attention and support.
Thank you so much for your contribution. I now wish to invite Ms Mary Van Lieshout to give her opening statement on behalf of Sport Ireland.
Thank you Chair. Members, Sport Ireland is the non-regulatory statutory body with responsibility for the development of sport in Ireland. Under the Sport Ireland Act 2015, we're tasked with developing participation in sport and high-performance sport, eliminating doping in sport, developing coaching, developing guidelines on the protection of children in sport, and developing the Sport Ireland campus. Sport should be a positive and enriching experience for everyone involved. Sport Ireland's vision is of an active Ireland where everyone can enjoy the lifelong benefits of sport and physical activity. To advance this, Sport Ireland provides direct, regular financial support to 100 sports organisations, including 65 national governing bodies, 10 other funded bodies, and 29 local sports partnerships. The ecosystem works together with a collaborative and integrated approach to target those at risk of exclusion in society. The primary delivery agent for programs focusing on social inclusion are the local sports partnerships, which are mandated to target minority groups. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Phelim Macken, coordinator of the local sports partnership in Limerick. In 2024, the Irish Sports Monitor found that 49% of the adult population regularly participated in sport, representing a 2 percentage point increase since 2023. The number of people regularly participating in sport in Ireland has increased from 1.98 million in 2023 to 2.09 million in 2024. Sport Ireland works to support this growth of participation nationwide in line with the targets set out in the National Sports Policy. As the development agency for sport, Sport Ireland works to empower the sector to design and implement programs and initiatives which increase participation in sport and target underrepresented groups, including those facing addiction. It is our ambition that local sports partnerships and national governing bodies work collaboratively within grassroots sport to service the whole community. This is delivered through funding streams such as CORE, dormant accounts, and European social funding, which contribute towards the well-being of people impacted by drug addiction. We know that sport delivers significant and wide-ranging benefits to Irish society, extending far beyond physical fitness and elite performance. Research from Sport Ireland highlights that sports participation improves mental health outcomes and helps reduce gender disparities in mental well-being. These effects are especially meaningful in disadvantaged communities, where targeted initiatives such as European social funded and dormant accounts funding help remove participation barriers and foster stronger, more connected communities. There's a growing body of evidence supporting the role of physical activity in the treatment and recovery from substance use disorders. It has also been found that when integrated into therapeutic approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, exercise addresses both the physical and psychological aspects of addiction. Group-based physical activity plays a unique role in social recovery, helping individuals expand their support networks and reduce exposure to drug use triggers. Taken together, these findings underscore the importance of embedding sport and physical activity into public health and addiction strategies, not only as a tool for treatment and prevention, but as a foundation for long-term personal and community resilience. When focusing on the link between adolescent substance use and sport in Ireland, the research remains limited. However, the Planet Youth Initiative, coming out of Iceland, conducts biennial surveys of 15 and 16-year-olds across regions in Ireland. This data highlights a paradox, whereby participation in sport is positively correlated with alcohol consumption in adolescence. There's a need for integrated strategies that promote the positive aspects of sport and could address the potential links to early alcohol initiation. Sport can also expose individuals to risk-taking behaviors such as recreational drug use in post-match or social settings. As a development agency, our work is grounded in research and data, enabling us to highlight the positive impact of sport while identifying where further progress is required. Sport Ireland is playing its role to empower the sector to deliver targeted initiatives aimed at increasing participation across all cohorts of society, including those facing addiction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And now we shall invite Mr. Karl O'Brien to give your opening statement on behalf of Brace and the Boxing Clever programme.
Chair, thank you for inviting Trina and me here today and giving us the opportunity to share some of what we do through the Box and Clever programme. At its heart, Box and Clever is about creating real community-based integrated pathways into recovery. We do that by combining three key elements: rehabilitation, education and fitness. It is a structured programme that brings people together in their own community to begin and sustain recovery, offering both recovery initiation and recovery progression pathways. The programme was originally developed and delivered in Ballymun, but over the years it was grown from a local initiative into a citywide and now national model, with communities across Ireland connecting with our core ingredients of learning, well-being and belonging. What makes Box and Clever different is its accessibility. We know from experience and from evidence that traditional residential treatment is not always an option, particularly for women. Many have family and caring responsibilities that make it impossible to step away for lengthy periods. Our programme offers a credible community-based alternative, one that allows people to engage in treatment, recovery and education while remaining connected to their families and communities and local support networks. While offering an alternative treatment pathway, Box and Clever also provides exceptional value for money when compared to other residential drug treatment responses. The cost per participant on average is €1,250, whereas Tier 4 funded residential treatment beds can cost upwards of €12,000 per bed for a residential drug treatment programme. Box and Clever delivers comparable outcomes and lasting community benefits at a significantly less cost. Our approach is strongly evidence-informed, aligning with many of the recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly on drug use, including the call for more health-led, community-rooted and gender-aware responses to addiction. Through Box and Clever, participants can bank recovery capital, build skills, confidence, social supports and a renewed sense of purpose. They complete accredited education modules, take part in structured fitness and wellbeing activities and engage in group work that supports emotional, mental and physical health. The mentoring role within Box and Clever is the cornerstone of the programme's community-based recovery rehabilitation model. Mentors are not external professionals, they're graduates of the programme who have lived experience and only a few steps ahead of current participants. What we see every day are people rediscovering belief in themselves. Many go on to further education, employment or community work. A key part of that journey is a shift in identity from previously fractured identities to that of a self-directed student, athlete and employee. We are proud that Box and Clever Ballymun has been recognised by Oireachtas for excellence in community adult education. That recognition means a lot because it shows that education and recovery can and should go hand in hand. Our reach and reputation has continued to grow. Currently, there are 5 Box and Clever programmes running across Dublin, with national implementation in Cork, Limerick and Leavy. Additionally, at the moment, the programme is in the pilot stage of potential implementation in 4 prisons. We have had the opportunity to present the programme at national and international conferences, sharing the model with other practitioners and policymakers who recognise the value of a community-based continuum of care. To date in Ballymun, 145 students have graduated from Box and Clever. 110 of them have achieved QQI awards, with many progressing to third level education, including one former student who is pursuing a PhD, and numerous others who have earned degree qualifications and are now employed in health, fitness and social care sectors. In short, Box and Clever demonstrates what can be achieved when sport, education and recovery services work together. It is a model that's cost effective, with an evidence capacity to be replicated. The programme is deeply rooted in community development principles, a model that connects people, builds well-being, creates integrated pathways of care and offers real hope. As one participant quoted in the most recent Box and Clever research report, it was the first step of so many good things. And that's what Box and Clever is about, creating those 4 steps and helping people keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karl. We're over to members. We have 7 minutes for members to ask questions or contribute. I think given the strong level of attendance today, we might have to be strict on time, but certainly in the first round. And the first contributor is Senator Van de Quillen.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to all the witnesses for coming in. Really looking forward to the engagement today. Luke, I want to start with you because I want to thank you for sharing your story. I know that's not, it's not an easy thing to do, and I know it's not the first time you've done it either, but it's still a very brave thing to do, to come in here and to share that level of detail. And I know you continue to share and you continue to kind of pay it forward, but I think it's really important for you that you prioritise your recovery as well, and just make sure that you keep an eye on that and don't be just giving, your time to everybody else. You have to look after yourself as well. I will start with you though, because as Mary mentioned, the post-match celebratory drug use is anecdotally on the rise, and I just wonder if you could give us a picture of that. Now, I will caveat by saying I think alcohol is the most dangerous drug, and it is a drug, and that culture has always been there as well. But in terms of the recreational drug use in that post-match or celebratory type scenario, are you seeing an increase in the anecdotes that we are hearing?
I suppose just for myself, firstly, I'm probably a bit removed from that situation. But I suppose you can't paint everyone with the same brush. And I suppose there's something, as rumours travel around, you're going to say that everyone is kind of doing it. But there definitely is a problem, like probably more so in clubs with recreational drug use. I think it's the problem is like the build up to a final or the letdown after a final. And I think people, because they might stay off the drink or whatever for a while, I think that's where the problem comes in. So I don't think it's an individual thing. I think it can be down to collective, but I don't think you can blame one person for that or like a organisation for it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, your road into recovery was through sport because it was through the GPA that you accessed supports. Was your addiction or your time in addiction, was that peppered with your life in sport as well, or was it totally separate? I know you mentioned your search for belonging, and I can relate to that. I can relate to a lot of your story actually. But I suppose I'm wondering how much of a hand-in-hand journey was it with your life in sport?
I suppose from when I was a young age, as I said, always felt a little bit different and happened to be quite talented at sport, and it probably got me away with a lot more, because even when I was acting out, my club would probably be like, this lad is probably going to be able to help us. So I'd probably have got away with a lot more. And the older I got, I was probably never faced any consequences for my actions. So subconsciously, I just kept going until the penny finally dropped with me. Yeah, thanks for the question. I hope that...
Oh yeah, thanks Lou. Thanks a million. Kevin, I want to ask you about your work. You said you are hoping to do a bit more work with the prisons in 2026. Yeah. That's something that we have talked a lot about in this committee, just around supports within the prisons, whether it's like addiction or mental health. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're planning or what you hope to do with the prison service?
Yeah, sure. Back, we've been going 20 years, and about 10 years ago, before I myself was involved, there was a prison programme, but it kind of fell into obsolete because there was a change of governor and they didn't want to continue with it. So we've got a league going out at the moment in Docus. One of our coaches, she coaches our women's World Cup team. She goes up there with the World Cup team and they have a weekly session. And what we discovered out of it was that some of the players, when they came out of prison, didn't really know where to go. They wanted to keep going with football and they were a bit lost. So we've kind of set up partnerships with some of the agencies that they go into, like they go into Coolmine, and then we now have the leagues with Coolmine. So there was a player who left Docus, had a couple of months with nothing, and then when we moved into Coolmine, she was there with them, so she joined the team, and from that she did trials for the World Cup, and she went to the representatives at the World Cup, and she's become a kind of an inspiration to her peers, her friends, the people who want to follow in the same path. So we had been working in the background, thinking we really want to kick this off again with more prisons. And over the course of the last few months over the summer, we've grown our board, and one of our board members is from Merchants Quay, Ireland, and her responsibility is with some of the prisons. She's the prisons in Leinster. She runs the programmes there. She has Merchants Quay programmes within the prisons. So our plan is to kind of use that, go speak to some of the governors in 2026, Shelton Abbey. There's one in Kavanagh, I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a very big one there. And apparently they have pitches on site. They have an interest in football, and we're thinking that would be an ideal way for us to get in there and kind of become part of their day. And also then when they get released, if they're being released into a part of the country that we're active in, they can keep the kind of process going. They can join us outside. So that's the plan, is to kind of look at Shelton Abbey and the one in Cavan, which I can never remember the name of. Yeah. Yes. We'll do them first, and then we're going to take it from there. So then we'll have to see how it goes, but that's the kind of current thinking.
Very brilliant. A lot of the witnesses in your opening statements mentioned like the pro-social impact of sport and the power of sport bringing people together. Karl, if I could just come to you for the last little while, or Trina, just around the Boxing Clever initiative. in terms of funding, because there's so much that you're doing in relation to community work, but also in terms of health, mental health, there's a lot of strands. So I just wonder how, like, where is most of your funding coming from, and are there any other streams that, you know, we could maybe help you identify?
There's differences depending on the area and the delivery of the programme. So some funding, I know directly in terms of Ballymun, so we get directed from Ballymun Local Drug and Alcohol Task Force. They've been continuous funders of us. So it'd be different than say to Recovery Academy and kind of how that kind of channel of funding and what stream that looks like. Trina can speak to that piece. But then again, so, and I know Phelim is here too, so Limerick kind of manage their own budget in terms of the funding stream for that. So I can't speak to that. So there's variations around funding. So when we come as a network, I suppose one of our pieces is that how do we continue to develop the programme further across communities, both locally and regionally too. So there's I suppose there's limitations with what we can work with, but that depends on where the funding is drawn from.
Okay, I think I'm out of time. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks a million, Senator. Sorry, I created some confusion at the start by not declaring that Senator Van de Quillen had stepped in for Deputy John Paul O'Shea, and similarly Senator Mary Fitzpatrick is stepping in for James O'Connor. And that was my confusion, so Senator, you're...
It's no problem. Thank you. And Gormagat Kirloch, and thank you all for being here with us today. You know, you're very much part of this solution, like sport is very much part of a health-led approach. And I just want to, at the outset, really commend you for the work that you're doing. It's really inspirational, and that's not just you, Luke, that's all of you, genuinely, so thank you. The big challenge, I guess, is there's all of the positives that go with sport, but there is, and a number of you call it out in your opening statements, the environment that it creates and the opportunity it creates and the exposure that it creates also for, you know, participation and introduction to, and then, you know, regular use of alcohol and drugs. And I can't remember which one of the statements it was. I apologise. Maybe it was yours, Jennifer, actually, where you I think in your statement you indicated that, you know, the use isn't any more prevalent than in the general population. But the general population is 1 in 4, you know, and that's in the sort of, I think, 19 to 65 age group. Like, it's much higher in younger demographics, and it's much higher in younger male demographics. So that's a big issue. And while I appreciate the point that you make in terms of the impact on the individual, and Luke, you're a really good example, you articulated really well how the environment in many respects enabled and encouraged, not deliberately, but by virtue of the fact that you were really talented, excuses were made for your behaviour. So I guess my question is, and I've heard this anecdotally, that, you know, players are actually encouraged, you know, coming up to big matches, coming up to championship, coming up to, you know, and, you know, big competitions, you know, Coke doesn't put on the calories the same way as beer does. And, you know, I've heard this. I mean, Yvonne alluded to the stuff that she's heard. You hear this, it's out there, it's just talked about. So I guess our challenge is to try and, you know, bring forward real concrete proposals that the state can implement to truly put in place a health-led approach, not just the informal, let's say, and there's a lot of really good work. I really don't want to take from, but I think we all recognise that a significant scaling up is required in terms of our response as a society and the state's then support of that response to achieve a truly health-led response. So I suppose if you were to call out what your top priorities, when an individual is coming to you for help, to your organisation, what would be your top priority in terms of where funding should go to make the resources that will be most meaningful available to enable you to respond, to actually help those individuals? We can start. Jennifer, I called you out your statement, so maybe you want to start, but I'd like to hear from all of you, please.
Yeah, no problem, and thank you very much, Senator, for the question. I suppose from us, from a data perspective, we're not seeing an increase. So there was an ESRI report published in 2019, where 77% of inter-county players felt that their teammates didn't engage in illicit drug use or any drug use. And we did a recent survey there in the previous few months where we found that 20% of players felt that their teammates were engaged in recreational drug use. So that there hasn't been an increase that we're seeing, I suppose, in terms of the data. But I understand what you're saying in terms of anecdotally. And for us, I suppose, we have the crisis supports, and we're very lucky that we're able to provide those for players in terms of residential care and counselling. But where we see the issue, I suppose, is that early intervention and prevention and raising awareness among young people that this isn't a healthy behaviour in terms of coping with the stresses and the demands and the struggles that all of us experience through life. So that's why we've, I suppose, partnered with the GAA and Movember on a mental health literacy programme, because we're really aware of the impact that we need to make earlier before it becomes an issue. So from our perspective, that's where we would really welcome, that would be a priority, trying to contact and engage with our membership much earlier before it becomes a problem.
Can I just ask you about funding? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that fully funded by the GAA?
So that programme is funded by Movember, and we deliver it in collaboration with the GAA.
Okay, thank you. Karl or Trina?
I think it's difficult to name a top priority when we're looking at developing a care plan for people and kind of bridging that piece around integrated pathways of care, because the needs change. So I think that's quite a fluid piece that I suppose our role in terms of managing that treatment plan and the process is quite integrated within where I work in terms of Ballymun. But I do think that it's very difficult just to spotlight what is the particular need at one point. I think it moves all the time depending on where the person is moving in the process. So it might be education attainment, then you're looking at education bursaries as the priority at one point. Drug treatment, a bed might be a priority at one point. Particular skill set might be a priority in terms of funding.
Yours is a very individualised care plan.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, and I suppose in line with, the common assessment tool that's coming in terms of the integrated pathways of care, that's where kind of we align where our priorities are in terms of care plan goals. Yeah. So it moves over time.
Okay, thank you. Gormagas.
Well, just to take it from a sports partnership perspective, so we obviously have a broad reach from preschool to older adults, so we have both an education element, an informing element, and then crucially an enabling element around sports participation and physical activity. But I think we have found, as we're almost 24 years now as organisations, that we're gone into very more targeted communities to support. And for us, particularly around the education piece and particularly around drugs and alcohol, as Karl mentioned, we have a very successful Boxing Clever programme in Limerick. We've been doing it about 7-8 years now. And I think that visibility of an organisation like a sports partnership also having this kind of a programme as one of its suite of deliveries is an awareness thing as well. So that starts that conversation. Secondly, we then work exclusively with national governing bodies. So we don't go in to try and do everything in the club space, be it in soccer, rugby, GA, athletics, etc. But we will work collaboratively with the governing body. So the GAA Healthy Club model has a lot of work that they are doing, particularly around addiction, mental health, gambling, etc., and then delivering those workshops. So thankfully we have a staff member at the moment who is our Sport for Empowerment officer and was previously involved in the Boxing Clever programme. From a delivery perspective, he's now one of those tutors. So he's out in the ground getting into the clubs and making those connections. And then again, it's related back to us as an entity around sport and physical activity, whereas Karl's very specifically in the community setting. So that in itself is a really good magnifier for the community. And the fact that, making people aware there is evidence there of what is actually happening, but also what educational pathways are there and what connections are there. So it's trying to bring it into that space from an educational and awareness perspective, which I think is probably our biggest way of doing that. We also sit on the Drug and Alcohol Task Force in Limerick, and we work with them around, their experts that go into the schools doing the Let's Talk About Drugs conversation. So again, it's that connectivity with us. So we're trying to, as Sebco mentioned, that sport is the hidden social worker. We do as much as we can, but it's about that active systems piece of connecting all the relevant agencies to be able to work in collaboration.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Owen.
Chair, and thanks everyone, and huge apologies for being late into the session. I was coming from something else that I had to speak at this morning, but I obviously have read all the submissions, so thank you. I think, Kevin, my first question that's kind of coming up for you and is in relation to, obviously over the years we've done some bits together in relation to the street leagues and the Homeless World Cup, and something that always stood out to me is the huge opportunity and privilege and work that the men and women put in to represent their country and go abroad. But the fear at that stage in terms of leaving the country for some people who addiction, drug use and past criminal convictions have on their record in terms of, so can you speak at all to any situations whereby people's actual chance to represent their country either was jeopardised or was removed in terms of being able to travel? Because we know that drugs possession sits in the same category as rape, murder and firearms, no matter how small it was, and I'm just wondering, has that impacted the work that you guys do in terms of travel?
Yes, it hadn't in the past, but it has become more of an issue recently, because the Homeless World Cup, which is held every year, for those that aren't aware of it, you have to have a different team every year. You can only represent in it once, and because they're expanding it, they're putting it on in different countries. And in 2023, the first year after the pandemic, it was on in Sacramento in the US, and basically one of our teams couldn't go because they wouldn't forgive past indiscretions. It was like there was no way they were getting through customs. So we only went with one team that year. That's kind of been the biggest one. It was almost like everywhere else we've managed to, there's been leniency with the hosting country.
Yeah.
But that was an absolute wipeout. So that's kind of the biggest problem. Yeah. But it's become more and more of a thing as they expand the host countries.
The host countries, yeah. And I kind of asked that really because of a wider point around when we look at, say, even Box Clever, which I'm a big fan of as well and have visited, and, you know, the fact that we ask people to build up, I suppose, capital within their recovery, or we ask people to, you know, whether it be access education or engage in programs and stuff, but then the fact that we still have policies that stigmatise and shame, that ensure that those convictions will follow a person for the rest of their lives, really impacts the capacity to fully realise and actualise, I suppose, the full breadth of what's available to someone in terms of their recovery. I'm just wondering then, Luke, when you received support from the GPA and they made a referral for you, though, that was into public services, wasn't it? It wasn't into private services. Was it Coolmirror, was it?
Yeah, I can speak to that. That's okay then. Yeah, so it was true. We have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, with Coonwara, which means that we have access to a support worker within Coonwara who supports a lot of our members who need support with their recovery. So, and we would fund that as well.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, obviously, then how beneficial and brilliant that is, that MOU and that kind of agreement, I suppose, exists between the GPA and treatment. And it's obviously something that doesn't exist in maybe other sport. I'm going to say working class sports, especially. I know like GAA and hurling is so much wider and has so much more diversity in it. But if we look at boxing clubs specifically, or soccer clubs in really working class areas, where there's a huge concentration of substance dependency for various different reasons, that it would be good to maybe to link with you guys, to maybe have some sort of connection where we can connect you guys with other sports industries that don't have an MOU like that with services, to maybe look at how you can, I suppose, share your knowledge and the breadth of your understanding in terms of how to develop that, so that other maybe more under-resourced community sports can build something like that as well. I'm wondering, is that something that you have been doing, or, you know, how and even if you want to speak a little bit more about that MOU, like how often has that been used in terms of, like, is it regularly utilised?
So I suppose from our perspective, Lynn, as well, we're looking at elite amateur athletes. So I suppose we're in a bit of a more privileged position than what you're discussing there. But we're more than happy. I suppose we recognise the role that we have in society and the role that county players play and the privilege that comes with that. So we're more than happy to work alongside other community organisations and to support in whatever ways we can. And the way that that was developed was just through building relationships with Cúnmara, recognising that there was an issue among some of our members that needed support, and trying to work between the two of us in terms of how could we better support them and get them access to the support they needed as quick as possible. And then when they're completed their residential care, the follow-up care after that as well. So we'd be more than happy to link in with other bodies if we can advise or provide any guidance. I'm conscious as well that we're not experts in this space. That's why we link in and collaborate with people who are experts in the space.
Yeah, I think it's even just the knowledge and understanding for, say, like the boxing authorities or other places to understand that that's a possibility, that they're also not experts, but there is a possibility to be able to create those relationships and how those relationships were developed. I think that's okay. I'm okay for now. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator Moran. Deputy Marie Sherlock, you're next.
And look, I just want to say a huge thanks to all the organisations here today, and particularly to you, Luke. I think your contribution is incredibly powerful, and I suppose you acknowledge that your role is a role model in sport and in wider society. So telling that story has an enormous impact, and thank you for all that work. I suppose I just want to. We often talk about sport as a diversion from substance dependency, but I want to understand a little bit more about that continuum from, I'm asking this across the organisations, from, I suppose, drug enhancing substances, supplements, all that, into cocaine use, so or other drug use, because I suppose I'm trying to get my head around this breakdown between sport and drugs as something recreational. And again, we spoke about earlier about, that it's less calories in drugs compared with alcohol or other recreation. But in terms of the continuum from and maybe Sports Ireland might have a particular insight or whether research has been done on this as to whether there is a continuum or not, or whether drug use is purely recreational for sports people. And I think the GPA might have a perspective on this as well.
Thank you, Deputy. Certainly, we realise that there's much more work to be done to understand this. The research that's being done by Planet Youth has shown a consistent association in those younger years with alcohol, not only with sport and mental well-being, but paradoxically, as I've said, but alcohol and sport participation. We want to follow that up with much more qualitative evidence on how that's happening and what that pathway is. It's very important that we do everything we can to promote understanding of what is acceptable and what is not and what is prescribed. And so it's through our anti-doping work that we are hearing, again anecdotally, that there are questions coming through to our anti-doping representatives and team asking, is cocaine prohibited? Are some of these illicit drugs prohibited in the same way? So we're aware of more work that needs to be done both in our training packages on what's accepted, what's prohibited, including recreational drugs. But again, we refer to the regular and the associated authorities rather than this becoming some kind of a specialty or expertise of Sport Ireland. We're bounded by our statute. So we remain within our education and training, aware of this growing need and introducing into our programs awareness raising, but also making sure that our partners such as the local sports partnerships, the health services, the Department of Health are made aware that there is work to be done collaboratively across this. I'll hand over to the GPA to add to that or to...
just one additional point. I think that's one of the key, I suppose, successes and importance of the task forces. So, for example, in Limerick, we sit on the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum, and during a period of a time of needle drop program that was being run out in Limerick, one of the things they noticed was the high number of performance enhancing needles that were actually coming into this needle drop and needle exchange program. So again, we worked in collaboration with the task force. We worked with Professor Jim McVeigh in the Manchester University and Dr. David Nolan from DCU, and we put together a seminar for our clubs and our community groups, and particularly our gyms, you know, to raise this awareness on that, and then we keep that material circulating out into that space. So because of our connection to the task force, you know, we were in a position to be able to have an action on that, and just to see if we can in some way, and again, as the lads have reiterated, we're not experts in this area, but we are able to do elements particularly around education, and then get access to the experts to get those messages out there.
Okay, thank you. I was really glad, just in terms of the, I suppose both Boxing Clever and in particular the Irish, to Kevin, to your organisation, just in terms of raising the gender specific, because I don't think we talk about gender enough when we talk about substance dependency and abuse, and in particular, I suppose, I think it's a 15% of women participate. So, and you have a clear link with the DOCA Centre. So you might just talk a little bit more about maybe the challenges of trying to encourage more women to participate in the street leagues, because I think that is, you know, again, we see, you know, sport all too often is seen as something male dominated, but that needs to change, of course.
I think the problem is twofold. I think a lot of the women who are eligible to play for the street leagues have kids, or are working, looking after someone as a carer, or, you know, have jobs just to keep, because most people that we deal with are kind of on programs, so they're kind of in there, we're kind of downstream. They're working through their issues and problems, but a lot of them don't have the spare time, and we have limited time that we can put the leagues on, because sometimes we're restricted to the venues. They only have X amount of time that you can hire it. We've limited number of coaches, so I think that's the first one. They have a lot more demands on them. A lot of the males that we have seem to be able to just come as and when, but they don't come every week. It's kind of, it's not that structured with them.
Sorry, can I just say something? It's very important that we get the women involved, because there was such a huge difference when we brought a female team with the lads, because the lads actually don't come out of themselves. It takes them a long time to trust people and to get involved. When we brought the women along, the dynamic totally changed. They mothered kind of the lads. There was more communication all around. But again, the main problem was they may have children that are dependent on them. Their children may be in care and they only get them at a certain time. And we did bring one girl over, and she brought her daughter. So we were able to accommodate them where she had a room with her daughter, because she had actually nobody else to look after. And a lot of them have no family that can look after these children. So that's a big concern for us.
Their teammates become their family. And that's not a cliche, that's actually reality. They remain in contact and they support each other. The women, as you said, within 5 minutes of meeting, they were a team, they were united, they were a network. The males, in our 10 weeks of training up to the World Cup, you see a different person by week 10, but it's a much slower drawing. There are individuals that become a team.
Okay. Well, I don't ask another question, but I do want to just pass a comment and say, look, to pay tribute to the brilliant work of Boxing Clever, because I think you powerfully very much make that point that obviously many women can't take up the residential, it's not an option for them. So as an alternative, it is a fantastic project, and just to pay tribute to your work, and I do hope it expands, and obviously you've got clear recommendations for the committee here, so thank you on that. Thanks, Chair.
Deputy Chair, Deputy Colin Burke, you're next.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all of you for the work that you are doing, and to the organisations that you work for. You know, without those organisations, we wouldn't have the sports infrastructure that we have. And I suppose one of the things that strikes me is, you know, if you go into the juvenile district court at any time, you would find that something like 90% of the people in before the courts are not involved in any sports organisation or any physical activity or involved in any club. And I suppose one of the things that occurs to me in relation, and it came across to me very much when I was Minister dealing with the opening of Merchants Quay supervised injection facility, and the lack of access to funding for, in I suppose, poorer areas, that you don't have the same expertise to follow up the grants, and they don't have a mechanism for giving support there. And I'm just wondering, is there something that we could do both at national level, at local authority level, in the individual organisations, to put a support mechanism in place to help areas like that to access the funding? Because without funding you can't have the facilities, and there is a huge problem in some areas where we don't have adequate facilities. And I'm just wondering if there's something that we really need to look at from the point of view helping those areas. I'm not sure.
Again, if I can lead on that, I think when the Sports Capital Programme was out originally, when it was in the paper format, it was quite a challenging piece of work for a lot of communities, and then it depended on, you know, who the volunteers, who the committee members were in those communities to lead on those. And you had other sports that had maybe more qualified professionals leading them and being volunteers and had a better understanding, whereas some of the other communities maybe did not have the same level of expertise and probably had people who did a lot of labour work, etc., traditionally. And, you know, maybe the funding applications weren't really written to the merit that they should have been to support those communities. As that evolved, workshops were provided by sports partnerships and other organisations, and particularly the governing bodies of sport themselves, to try and help people in that process. Then when we transitioned to the Oscar system, it actually became a more user-friendly, believe it or not, because one of the unfortunate barriers for a lot of people originally was documents were missed or boxes weren't ticked and a valuable piece of information were left out, whereas in the Oscar system, you actually can't go from one section to the other if there's something missing. Okay. So that has helped. But I do believe more workshops should be delivered by the Sports Capital Unit to make people aware and then to connect them into organisations like the sports partnerships. You know, we would offer that support to clubs, you know, during that process if they need assistance with us.
Do we need to identify areas where people, you know that there isn't the expertise there to deal with it, and then to provide that support? And I don't think we've done, and it occurred to me very much in relation to Merchants Quay, where we had a local school there with over 170, 180 children, but very little access to any kind of facilities, sports facilities at all, and no mechanism there for helping that. And I'm just concerned that we're not doing enough in that area, and that we all need to work together on it, and it's just about putting it together both within the organisations but also at central government level and at local government level as well.
Deputy, can I simply add that currently Sport Ireland is working closely with the planning regulator to identify, as we have this significant investment in new housing, to identify areas of where this housing is going and how we can make sure that we're building communities, not just houses, so that there are appropriate sports facilities. But that's leading us into work around identifying demand for sports facilities currently and where we're not meeting that demand. That work has only just initiated with the current national conversation around housing development and investment. But we hope that it will help us identify much more clearly communities that are being left behind by sport infrastructure going into the future and currently.
And what's the target date for having something in place to deal with that?
Deputy, you'd have to give me a pass on that, because the work has simply started. Having said that, the Irish Planning Regulator the Office of the Planning Regulator is very ambitious about this and have put very ambitious timeframes in front of us. Okay. So we've dedicated people within our research and data analytics team to be supporting that initiative. It's not years, it's very contemporary.
Can I just ask one other question, and that's in relation to clubs itself? Just a totally different issue, and that's in relation to clubs itself, where they know that there's a member who is actively, I suppose, dealing or, you know, providing access to drugs to other members of a club. Have clubs been, I suppose, trained as regards how to carefully manage a situation like that, in order to steer the person who's involved in that in the right direction? But also, I mean, they obviously, it's a very difficult process, and I'm just wondering, have we done enough in that whole area as well? I'm just wondering if any of the organisations have a mechanism for dealing with that, where they know someone is in there, and as a result, people are afraid to challenge it.
Well, we don't have an official mechanism. We are, as I mentioned, we tend to be downstream. We tend to have people who are on programmes, and they're coming to us from agencies. And quite often, if the agency is aware that something is happening, they will stop, like Kumai would stop the player coming to us. We have got what is called social coaches on our team, though. And what they do is their job is to see if a particular player is mentally ready for the challenges of the football that we're doing and the competitions. Because sometimes the players have the ability, but they may not be ready for the attention that it's going to get. So we have people who can monitor it there. We haven't had any incidents of anyone selling because because they're all, the ones that turn up are keen. It does mean some people probably drop out who might have gone back, but within our environment, it's not and never been an issue because our coaches have all kind of gone through the process, the program themselves. They know, they're very vigilant about what's going on. So we're not a typical club in that sense.
But do you think more work should be done in this area to help people who are involved at a voluntary level in clubs and organisations?
Yes, I mean I do. It's I think you missed your name there, but you were saying something about how it's about community and connections, and we can all kind of connect a bit more with each other rather than working in little silos. And I think breaking down wherever we can do that in whatever area, I think it's a good thing.
Thank you.
The current mechanism that would come through the sports partnership is if the national governing body of that sport doesn't have a process, then they will come to us, and then it's that signposting piece then to the experts, be it community substance misuse team or through the task force in Limerick, so that you have these professionals that are able to then put a process in place with them. And then thankfully as well, which leads also to an educational model that is then requested for the club, whether it is both a coaches meeting or a seminar, or it's parent, players and coaches workshops, that we've seen many different examples of that across different sports in Limerick.
Thank you so much, Phelim. I'm going to have to thank you,
Thanks,
Deputy. Senator Costello's been very, very eager to get in. So.
Thanks everybody for coming in today, and really enjoyed listening to your statements. First of all, the Irish Homeless Street League, so you know I'm very familiar with you, and I've seen firsthand the contribution you've made to people's lives. I know people who have availed of your club and are thriving, being a part of it. Luke, I really connected to what you said, and like as a sports lover myself, and I know my opinion on sports generally is that if people are involved in sports, they don't fall in as quickly to the trap of drugs. I think it's a key piece in keeping kids away from drugs. So Luke, you mentioned earlier on in your childhood the absence of a parent and the void that had. And do you think that was more of a contributing factor to falling into addiction rather than being supported by your teammates, feeling like you were in an environment obviously where you had friends and you belonged, but do you think that void was what turned you into addiction?
Thanks, Senator Christopher. Probably comes into the first question a small bit. I suppose regardless of what sport I did, I felt like the lack of a parent personally was, say, traumatic to me and my situation. And as I went along, I always felt like different, and I always was looking for some sort of attention, positive or negative. And as I got older, obviously snowballed. So I don't really think it would have mattered what sport I was in or what I was doing. I still think, regardless if I didn't get help a professional, I probably would have suffered with the same stuff regardless. So I can't really blame sport for my addiction.
Do you think that sport actually contributed to giving you the strength of character to, have a successful recovery? Do you think the tools that you learned, like from being involved in sport, built you up to be the person that you are, as such that, you know, if you hadn't had sport in your life, but you had this void, do you think things would have been much different?
I'm not really sure. I'd like to think that it would have been different, because the GAA in particular are very forgiving. They love a good story. Now in Westmeath there's not too many good stories all the time, but look, I'm very lucky that I've had no real negative feedback from what I've done. I'm obviously I've made mistakes in my life that I'll always have shame and guilt over, but as I said, they're trying to be a better person and to help people use and learn from my experience is kind of what I'm doing at the minute. So I suppose I'm very grateful to GA. I'm lucky I work in it, and especially to the younger kids. You know, that's where I probably was missing out on something. So if I can try be that person for as many as I can, with obviously looking after my own recovery as number one, that's very important to me. So I don't think I would have been able to do what I've done without the GA and GPA.
It's just that kind of comment regarding the exposure to drugs. Like, I'm thinking, is it more sports performance enhancing kind of drugs that, you know, the real exposures to, rather than recreational? Because I know people have mentioned about coke doesn't put on weight. I like, as somebody who played sport, like I just can't imagine that scenario of somebody saying, look, take coke coming up to the match because you're not going to put on weight. And I just, as somebody who played sport, I can't imagine that scenario. I just can't connect with that. With regards boxing Ireland, and like I love boxing myself, and I'm involved in a boxing club in Tala, and I just think the work that they do with kids, and given that environment where it can be probably the only place they feel validation and that real connection to adults. How do you actually get, like, so if I was in addiction and I wanted help, how do I connect with you guys to be a part of one of your programs?
Great question. So with our programme, we're a little bit different than the Ballymun version. So each Box and Clever programme is kind of a slight variation of the original, which started in Ballymun. So with ours, we're community-based. We're not actually service provision, whereas where Karl would work, they would have in-house key work, and we don't have that available to the participants of ours. So we very much rely on working with our partners in the community. So we would be linked in with a lot of the services, and people can also self-refer themselves into the programme as well. So most of our referrals are actually self-referrals. So people have heard about the programme, and maybe they've had a previous interest in sport before they fell into addiction, and they're looking at a kind of a way of building healthier habits, and they tend to just kind of refer themselves. It's then an interview process. So we're just looking at people's kind of willingness to commit for 20 weeks. But yeah, so that's kind of how they engage with us.
And then for Jennifer, like, how many players have actually come to you looking for support? And then around, just in general, like, what is the anti-doping? Like, is there much anti-doping testing being carried out?
I don't have the exact figures on that, but I can provide those for you at a later date through the clerk. But in terms of the anti-doping, all inter-county players are required to undergo anti-doping education every year, and they're all subject to testing at any point. So it's not something that we're seeing as a huge issue in terms of performance enhancing or in terms of recreational drug use either. In terms of players that are accessing their services for counselling support and for residential care, so in 2024 we had 119 new referrals to our counselling support service and delivered over 700 counselling sessions. And in terms of residential care for addiction, we had 4 players go through that in 2024, and that was predominantly gambling addiction.
Yeah, and I can understand that as somebody who played football. Like, you're competitive, and gambling nearly, you know, pulls you into being even more competitive, seeing if you're going to win and stuff. But I just leave it on a comment. I think, like most of the people who I know who are in recovery do turn to sports or religion, and they always kind of want to give back and support others. And I think it's brilliant to see people like yourself, Luke, sharing your story and using your lived experience to help others, because I don't believe people who haven't really been through it and haven't experienced the challenges can really, really understand and, you know, help as much as somebody who has have had the lived experience. So thanks very much.
Gramai got Cahirlock, agus the Falsha Rove Giller and Sean you. Look, Luke, I would say we're some of us are probably a lot like the GA in the sense we like a good story and a good example, and absolutely fair play to yourself in relation to that. Look here, drink, as Ivan said earlier, like we always had a bad relationship with it, so therefore here drugs has just fallen into that space, right? There are particular issues that exist obviously in working class areas, but there is just a prevalence across society that's absolutely brutal. And while sport is absolutely fabulous from connectivity and purpose and all those things that are necessary, it's not shocking obviously that those engaged in sport are going to be caught up in relation to this. Now obviously the GPA is a very particular type of organisation, and you're obviously very organised in relation to this and probably, you know, ahead of the game, as the GA would be in an awful lot of cases. You have an MOU with Cunwera. I'm just wondering, like, in relation to what sort of need have you had in the last while, and then what sort of framework have you had to develop to deal with it?
Yeah, so I suppose what we're probably aware of is that there is still a significant stigma, especially for elite, GA players, because of the additional public scrutiny and attention. So we're very aware that there possibly are more of our members who need support and aren't seeking it from us, but in terms of the actual figures, as I mentioned, we've had 4 players who went through residential treatment in 2024, and the MOU with Cunwera, I suppose, was recognition that our players maybe were less likely to seek support given that stigma and the kind of public scrutiny.
And everyone that's come to you has looked for that sort of residential programme?
No, so we would link. So we have a counselling service available as well for players. So some of our members might get in touch to look for counselling support, and again, that's all confidential. So we provide it either directly through the GPA, or they can contact our counselling service confidentially, and it's independent. And that's to try and, I suppose, avoid that barrier of getting in touch with somebody through the GPA if they just want to go directly to a confidential service. That's why we provide that service as well. So we had 119 new referrals in 2024 to our counselling service, and that was for a range of different issues.
And Luke, would you have found this like relatively painless in the sense of when you went to the GPA, like they facilitated everything and got you where you needed to be? And I guess that here it took probably 10 years of, failed tries before you got there.
I suppose just as personal, obviously, and I was very lucky. This was kind of ongoing for a few years. There was probably recognised that I probably was struggling with some sort of problems, and a couple of times I had gone to the GPA with counselling, and obviously I wasn't ready to get help then. I had obviously was more so in denial. But this had obviously gone on a few times from different managers, and obviously I was in a position where it was easier to lie and say, oh sure, there's nothing going on, like typical thing. But I suppose when I reached obviously my rock bottom, as it was, that when I was ready to get help, GPA were straight in. I think I was in treatment centre the next day, I think, because obviously I might have a bit of a different situation, but any time I've ever needed anything since or before, within a matter of days, it's sorted with the GPA. So very lucky for the either counselling or personal development side of things.
Oh, that's a hell of an endorsement. And obviously there's a wider piece of work that needs to be done into society, because like people will have a million different stories, and we've all had people come to us even as elected representatives, and at times you've used the public system, but more times than not you've used unofficial connections with someone, and even somebody who can get you in sideways into whether it's a treatment service or a residential centre, or whether it is a community-based programs, and here sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes it takes a number of times, and I suppose but look, that's it, and I suppose it's making sure that happens across the board. Boxing Clever, you obviously are operating with Red Door in Drogheda at this point in time. But in general, as you say, some of them are more organised where it's a holistic framework, and in some other cases you're utilising, partners. But either which way, I imagine there's a whole pile, like, do you have particular spec in relation to if somebody shows up in the throes of the worst parts of addiction and whatever else, like, how do you deal with them? Like, are you dealing with probably a cohort of people who have already started their journey before they make the referral is made to yourselves?
Yeah, I suppose we have that assessment kind of process that's there. You kind of aim to work with people at different stages of change. So we have people that may be in kind of, again, particular point in their recovery journey and are substance free, and would be a high percentage of the group we would kind of manage in terms of that space. And then we also believe that working with people that aren't at that particular point of their journey too, and that a lot can be learned from each other in terms of the process and the supports and the networks that they can develop together. So that's something that we've worked with ongoing since the origins of the programme. We probably challenged the traditional norms, was keep substance-free people over there and keep people that are still trying to navigate their relationship with substance on one side of the room. So we've kind of joined that group together.
Just I imagine as well, you can, again, probably a lot more people come to you than you can actually deal with across the board, or what is the situation?
Sorry?
I mean, in the sense, there's a huge need out there. Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of people make their way to your doorway. You know, can you deal with all of them? You know,
Box and Clever is one part of a menu. Yeah. So in terms of our organisation in Ballymun, we have a range of services that work with that continuum of care. So we've kind of a low threshold kind of point of entry, and then would have a drug abstinence-based recovery group. So they're available in terms of a suite of options for people, and Box and Clever offers one part of that journey.
All right. Yeah. Well, look here, it's all very positive, and I suppose it's more of it we need, and then we need that it exists outside of sporting organisations. And I suppose there is another conversation in relation to, you know, what happens, as someone say, when a junior championship happens, and it's probably no different than how people celebrate an awful lot of other things, and we very much wish that it was probably done differently. I would just say in relation to the homeless street leagues, you've obviously set up in Dundalk and Drogheda in the last while. I've even played a couple of games myself, obviously an absolute... yeah. No, but it is brilliant. It's really positive. It provides connectivity. You know what I mean? It's generally a point in time in people's lives where there's a lot more supports that are required, and, you know, they're not always in existence.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deputy Grace.
First of all, look, thank you all for coming in today. It's great to it's easy to read through the presentations, but it's great to hear your experiences. And I'd like to congratulate you all on the great services that you all provide. I think what I got from a lot of the presentations is the huge potential there is there for sport to play such a positive role in prevention, but also in recovery. And the one message I got listening to you all was the connections, and the important, to me, connection is the complete opposition to addiction. But those connections, like to yourself, to your team, to your wider community, and the supports that are there, and that kind of really resonates. And the way that you can deal with win, lose or draw, or the things that. Like we've all been there with kids at the side of pitches and they're crying because they lose, and that's a coping mechanism that you learn through sports. And then the high, of course, when the win comes in. So it was great to hear. And Luke, I really have to commend you on coming in here today. I think you're an inspiration to other players. And I'd really like to wish you the very best in your continued recovery, but do, as others have said, mind yourself first, but you're doing great. So for the GPA, one question. I think the presentations have been so fulfilling that, that there's kind of, and a lot of questions have been asked already. So one of the things I'd like to ask is the challenges around advertising, particularly now with the zero beers and everything else being advertised as a way for people to still show their branding and associate it with, different companies and everything else. And, how do we overcome that? Is there a role for the government to actually give that advertising funding to sports clubs so you're not losing so much? Or is there a way around it? And then secondly, what supports do you provide at a local level Are there supports for local clubs, county level? You know, in most cases, because as we know, the GAA are in every community. And I have to say, all of my adult kids all, you know, played for various different clubs, and there was always huge amounts of sports supports there, and training and education and everything else. But because this has become such a real problem, like, what are you doing proactively for supports?
From our perspective, that's something that the GAA is probably more heavily involved in than the GPA. Okay. And I do know that the GAA are doing a lot of work in this space through their community and health department, and they have taken a very strong stance in terms of advertising from gambling organisations and alcohol and things like that. And we've been very much in support of that. So it's something that we often, as the organisation that we are approached by a lot of different companies from different backgrounds to fund different initiatives, and we're very selective in terms of who we will engage with, depending on where that funding is coming from. So ourselves and the GAA have taken quite a strong stance in terms of not accepting funding from gambling organisations and alcohol companies. So I can't speak from the GAA's perspective, but I know from the GPA perspective, our point of view, it's something that we're very strong in terms of we see the damage that can be done as a result, and it's not something that we would engage with. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, you know, absolutely it does. The homeless street leagues, like I visited the Ballymun Centre, and you know, so firsthand saw what you know, the great work being done there. Football is a central part of the recovery programme there. And I'd also like to mention Dion Lyons from Oliver Bond House, who got her first cap and, you know, made her a local hero, quite rightly. But it just... Yeah, superstar, yeah. So one of the challenges around recovery is encouraging women to reach out and make contact. And a lot of the women that I've spoken to, you know, like that, you know, they had issues with care for children. They also didn't have the time. It's easier for men, and I'm not being sexist here, but it is, you know, because it's always the women that are left looking after kids or other family members. And there was sometimes a fear of, if looking for help, they might be determined as not being able to look after their kids. So how do you work with attracting more women into the homeless street leagues while facing the challenges that they face?
Well, I think at the moment, what we've done this year, which is new, we're in a partnership at the moment with Rethink Ireland, and it's helped us double the number of leagues we have. Okay. Most of the leagues we've had up until this year have been our regular established evening leagues. But with the Rethink money, we've created community street leagues, which are the ones that are set up during the day in partnership with the various people I mentioned in my opening statement. And then when we're with them, then it's a shared work between us and the agencies to get more and more women involved. We have a very proactive, our female coach is also the woman who runs the Community Street League programme for us, and she's constantly reaching out to various other agencies. Contacted 2 more this week that we're hoping to get something going with next week. And so it's through making contact and speaking to people and then going out and having talks and engaging with them and telling them that basically, you know, we are there, we're not rigid. Yeah. We're there to try and find a slot that will suit your life. Okay. And that's kind of the approach that we have at the moment, I suppose. There is also a kind of there does seem to be more males out there who are committed to doing the football. It's their passion. A lot of them would have said, I think going back to something that Senator Costello mentioned earlier, I do actually think that the players we have, if they didn't have the sport, their life would be in a lot worse situation than it is now. But go back to the women, I think that's what you have to show, flexibility. But then we're restricted because we've only got X number of coaches and they're only available at certain times. So it's just trying to find the right time. And we had a kind of a slightly depressing case recently where someone was leaving a programme and she was going back home to Portarlington, and she asked if we have any leagues in the area, and we don't. And I'd love to have one in every town in Ireland, but we don't. So now you kind of think, God, I wonder, how is she?
That's the follow-on.
Yeah. I might actually have a word with Jennifer and see if there's any GAA things going on in the, this is about connecting, because these people, the people who are into football, they're also into other sports, and it might be that there might be a local GAA club who's, so I think that's where we talk about connecting within ourselves as well.
And most of the GAA clubs now have the mothers and others, so there's loads of groups there, No, thanks for that.
Deputy, Deputy Graves, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Oh, shit.
I know,
Okay.
and I'm next, so I mean, we'll come back to you. Thank you, Deputy. Thanks a million to all the contributors so far. It's been really fascinating. I just suppose to ask in terms of aiding the work of the committee, everyone that's listening can't be in any doubt the incredible work is due. How much would your work be benefited or impacted by the decriminalisation of people who take drugs in this country?
We've already touched on with Senator Rowan about how it would help access, getting into tournaments and stuff.
Yeah, I think for us, we run the Boxing Clever program every year, and we also have community sports hubs, in areas of disadvantage as well. And a big part of all of that is education, and also looking at employability for people or a pathway into other education, higher QQI level courses. So if they do their QQI level 5 with us around community addiction studies and health related fitness, you also then want to have them to be able to put that into practice, So we're looking then at opportunities of how can they work with us in the sports partnership in delivering community-based programs. So vetting is obviously essential as part of that. So we have a system on when the vetting disclosures come back, we have a subcommittee made up of our board members who then look at those, convictions in relation to severity level or time and duration, So for some of them, that's something that happened 10 years ago. That person has completely changed their life. They're no longer in addiction. They're no longer, drink alcohol, etc. So there's mitigating circumstances. So then you're able to put that in a supported environment to start that. And then for others that do fantastic coming through our programs, unfortunately, their disclosures prevent them, from being able to be involved in that capacity for us. So, they're doing so well in one element, but then there are other elements. And again, as Senator, Ruan mentioned, like the categorization of it as well with more serious crimes is not the way forward.
Thank you. Jennifer, I'm very conscious in terms of the work you do within the GPA. If an elite amateur athlete comes forward to you, declares that they have a problem which takes extraordinary courage. I mean, two of the barriers to that is one, fear of prosecution in some instance. But also within your own rules, does that mean you have to take a time out from playing where they recover, or how does that work?
We haven't had any incidents where a player has been tested, has been caught and has had to take time out in recent years. So it's not something that I've dealt with personally, but there are rules there in terms of the anti-doping, and if somebody is in violation of that, then there are the consequences associated with that. So it's not something I've dealt with directly myself, but it is, I suppose, also a deterrent for a lot of our members as well at that elite level. That testing process is there, and also that they do have to engage with the education piece as well every year as part of their membership of an inter-county panel. So it's not something I've dealt with myself directly.
Thank you. Could I ask in relation to the education? Several of you have spoken about education, and Phelim, you've talked about the Let's Talk About Drugs programme. Could you tell us a little bit about that programme in terms of how it's, like what are the contents, how is it measured over the course of years? How do we kind of gauge success or failures? One of our next sessions is going to be on education, so I'm just...
Yeah, so I suppose for us, it's our understanding of that programme is, again, through our participation in the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum. So we're familiar with their work, and, I sit on the Education and Prevention Subcommittee as part of that. So they recruited one of our staff down through the years as part of their team of people going into schools, giving that awareness talk, that education piece. And then how we also, as I mentioned, we have one of our officers is also delivering the GAA Healthy Club model. So again, it's around making our community groups, be it the schools, the clubs or the community groups, it's that awareness piece, it's that signposting piece, and it's again us not as experts, but being able to share, you know, where the avenues are for them, and connecting people in where they will get that, you know, professional support if they need that. And then also sometimes for the club, you know, some of them, they traditionally every year have an awareness workshop, whereas other clubs, they only have these workshops if there's an incident or something that has come to their attention in their club. So it's about using all the educational awareness models that are out there and then linking them into the relevant groups.
Perfect. Trina, I just want to ask in relation to the expansion of your own programme and your own models, how would that work? You've spoken about doing that through the drugs task forces, but I think if we can recognise how brilliant the Boxing Clever programme is, how do we work collectively in terms of how it can be expanded and what supports would that need?
We've, in the last year or so, we've set up a network committee of all the different Boxing Clever kind of programmes. So that has been a little bit like a community of practice, I suppose, for us. Because I think we were all a little bit like lone wolves out delivering our, you know, in our own different areas. So we're trying to, we don't want to completely standardise, I think, the programme, because it's important for it to be adapted to the local situation. But we are, you know, we recognise that we do need to invest a little bit more time and effort into that network and kind of having a communication strategy and maybe a more robust training programme for people to deliver the Boxing Clever. I think there's a lot of interest in Boxing Clever. A lot of different communities are interested in rolling it out, but I think we would like to see it being kind of maybe a little bit more of a robust model, so that it can stick to the fidelity of the model that we already exists, really, I suppose.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Jen. And then Luke, just for yourself, and can't thank you enough for coming in and give lived experience, and imagine that's really helpful for ourselves, but also for anybody else watching in. Is there anything you think the state could have done better in terms of supporting you in that journey? I'm very conscious you've clearly had amazing people beside you even now, but is there something that the state could have done better in terms of access to supports that weren't potentially available and should be available for the next person in your situation?
Probably not. I'm not really sure to answer on that.
That's fair enough.
Jenny, maybe if there's you could think.
I'm not sure. So from Luke's specific example, I suppose what we're seeing, especially even support for family members, like I think Luke mentioned in his statement that, you know, his mum was trying to support him for 10 plus years and had other kids to look after and other family members. And what we find a lot of the time with our members is that the impact that it has on family members, and there isn't any support for them in terms of the impact that it has. So I think that could be something that would definitely be worth improving and looking at. And I'm sure a lot of people in the room could speak to that a lot better than me.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. My time is up, so we'll go to our second session of members who are still here. Senator Quillen, you have 4 minutes.
Okay, thanks very much. I actually wanted to come back to the talk of a memorandum of understanding, because I think it's really interesting, but I also think that, like, the GPA was set up by players for players, and it's a very specific cohort, and obviously Arupa are there and the PFAI are there, but it's a small cohort of people, let alone the small cohort of players that actually would have access to the supports. So I wonder, is there a more widespread way of having that joined up thinking across different sports? And Phelim, I'm looking at you and I don't want to give you more work, but I do wonder, like the tentacles that the LSPs have all over the country, I wonder, is it something that could be looked at as a model of communication or care for people who are involved in sport in local areas but also are suffering with addiction, and whether or not there could be, you know, that pathway through the LSP via an MOU into somewhere like Clonmara? I don't know, I'm kind of thinking on the spot, but it's a really good idea, but it's very limited in terms of access for people.
100%, yeah. So I think that's one of our advantages and disadvantages of sports partnerships. Like I said in the opening, you know, we have a remit from preschool to older adults, and we're about 24 years in existence now. And if you think of how we have evolved from a staffing perspective, you know, for many years we had 2 in Limerick, now we have almost 20. But again, it's because of those needs. We have dedicated officers for chronic conditions, we have dedicated officer for sport for empowerment, dedicated officer for youth. And there is more and more of those needs. So it's kind of looking at how much can we actually achieve in relation to sedentary populations, people with low participation levels, and then that association with, the very marginalised and disadvantaged. But there are so many elements that lead to sedentary behaviour and people not being involved in sport, and some of that is through addiction, some of it is mental health, some of it is confidence, some of it is trauma, etc., and the environments that they live in. So we have a remit around sport and physical activity, but the reason that we are now so broad in our reach is because of all the other associated factors that are leading to people being inactive. So there is a mechanism there if they were resourced and staffed where you had, and I think that's something our ESF officers, why they're in there, using sport for social change. But the key ingredient for them was that they did not have huge numbers every year in their outputs. They had small cohort of people with very dedicated objectives around employability and education. And they're able to invest that time in people, whereas a lot of our development officer work is that collective, broader piece, whereas our dedicated ESF officer, it's more targeted, but it's less people. So if any, like we had 56,000 people that were through our programs in 2024. If our ESF officer had 150, out of all of that, that would have been a huge workload and a work package in a year, whereas another officer could have had 20,000, depending on what target area they worked with. So it's about that dedicated time to be able to do that, but also what support services are in their area. I mean, the reason we're involved in Boxing Clever is because we are part of the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum. We're very fortunate to have a very good committee there that provide us. So we run that program annually for 20,000, and that is not a huge amount of investment, but we're able to run it for that level because of the expertise within our LSP team that we're able to do elements of it. So I think that scope and capacity is there if it's resourced, but because we have that reach into all areas and all communities, but we can't always be seen as all things for everybody, but we are doing it as best we can at the moment.
I understand. I didn't mean to put extra work on you, but I do think it's something I might have a look at. So, Mary, don't be surprised if you hear from me.
I think it might be worth highlighting to the committee simply the work and the support of the dormant accounts funding has really supported the local sports partnerships and the national governing bodies at reaching the most socially excluded populations. That's not quick work. It's not easy work. It needs to be sustained. However, as I think everyone will appreciate, dormant accounts funding really peaked in 22-23, and it is on the decline in spite of increasing need. If we are really to reduce the gradient of the participation of these really hard to reach excluded groups, we need to continue that investment. It needs to be sustained. So it's something for you to consider how we will continue to support and finance that hard work of these groups on the ground. So it's just to make sure we don't lose sight of that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy Graves?
Just a couple of quick questions because I ran out of time the last time. Just in terms of Boxing Clever, and it's a similar question that we spoke about earlier about encouraging women into the sport. Have you looked at other alternatives, or do you have a partnership with other groups? And is there an opportunity for kind of childcare facilities to help to help people participate?
I can only speak to, I suppose, our experience the last 2 years of rolling out the Boxing Clever programme, and there has been, it's probably been 50-50 male and female who sign up for the programme, so there's definitely a huge interest with the women in getting involved in it. However, our drop-off rate is probably more female, and just at the top of my head, I know the people I'm thinking of, it has been predominantly parental responsibilities, whether it be childcare or just, I think somebody else mentioned, like if they have just recently got their children back, there's a priority to, for home responsibilities. So definitely there's something there. Also, I mean, we're very mindful to make sure that the programme starts at a time that school drop-offs and pickups can still happen. So we are conscious of the gender issue and that there seems to be more parental responsibilities on the females that get involved in Boxing Clever. But still we see the barrier. So childcare is always going to be an issue across the board with addiction services. Hopefully we will see more targeted childcare positions for people who are looking for treatment.
And I ask because it is raised up in all of the other services and Sports Ireland. Just very quickly, the Planet Youth survey. You say this data highlights a paradox whereby participation in sport is positively correlated with alcohol consumption in adolescence. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit, or?
Thank you, Deputy. The paradox is that sport is positively associated with positive mental health, and at the same time, we're seeing a correlation between the use of alcohol within adolescent populations who are also involved in sport. So that's what I mean by the paradox. This is research that's coming from an Icelandic initiative called Planet Youth that has been carried out in 3 counties in Ireland. We're determined to continue to explore this association to understand, as I said earlier, the pathways and the associations possibly with after sport celebrations as an example, to understand how we can impact on making sure that sport isn't a pathway to early initiation of alcohol use. So we're in early days, and my opening statement I mentioned that this is preliminary in terms of our full understanding of these associations, but we're determined to find more information around the experience of adolescence and what the association is. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Graves. Deputy Brabazon, would you like to ask a question? No? Okay, thank you. Well, unless there's anything you feel you haven't had an opportunity to say or any points you'd like to reiterate, you're more than welcome to take that time now. Excellent. I don't think there's anything left unsaid. It was really comprehensive and detailed. Genuinely, just it was great to be here. So thank you all so much for coming in and lending us your expertise. I will certainly benefit from it in terms of the work that we do. So thank you all. Thank you. And I need to say, meeting adjourned.
And there we go, that's the end of that session. Did he add there actually when the next session was going to be? I didn't hear him. He did say it at the end of the last one, so sorry, not just fixing my microphone, or better again, we just moved the camera. Let's go back up to the other screen. So there we go. Other people's thoughts, comments on that out there. I was just focused on sports, which I thought it was a good conversation to be fair overall. Obviously, it's going to be a bit one-sided. It's focused more around the drug addiction and not really said drug use overall. So it was pretty focused on that side of it. They were talking there at the end about the early initiation of use of alcohol. And I think there's something they're forgetting about there, that the celebrations, alcohol being present within team celebrations, alcohol use, drug use within groups. I think that's a form of group bonding, relationship building. There's definitely a place for it. Not that it should be always the case, not that people who don't partake in that should be excluded or anything. I definitely do see, though, the benefits and the negatives of the use of alcohol there when, say, celebrating after a win, just a kind of a Christmas party, as kind of Christmas is coming up. Most people kind of do that. They go to the pub or they go go-karting, paintballing. A couple of the Christmas parties that I would have partook in before. Which would have been followed by a trip to the pub, which was, it's always good. Never ended in a bad way, which is always quite possible when it comes to alcohol. But that's not alcohol use; that's alcohol misuse. Which, for the early use of alcohol, I think they're missing an opportunity by not focusing on that early misuse. Early use is going to happen. Let's just accept that, it's always safer not to do drugs, but look, they're going to do drugs. People at a young age, 15, 16-year-olds, what was it, about 15, in around that age anyway, when we first consumed some alcohol. Maybe a bit earlier, actually, probably as a little baby, and was my granddad. No, it was somebody anyway did scoop a bit of the cream off at the top of the old pint of Beamish or whatever it might have been. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I definitely think they're missing an opportunity there anyway by focusing on the early use at a young age rather than the early misuse, and that should be focused on within the education. As I said, let's accept it. It's going to happen. It's better to advise them not to do it, but if they are going to do it, here is, some cautions, some warnings, whatever, some proper information as to how to use a drug responsibly. But, let's hope that the trend, the push, the focus goes towards that, because it seems the last few recommendations, the last few reports on this has been that it should be health focused, health or harm reduction, health focused drug policy, which is decriminalisation. That's regulation. That's the only way you can be truly health focused, harm reduction focused. But nice one, everybody, for the comments out there. Taffin saying it would alcohol is what's making the cocaine problem worse. I suppose in one way, I wouldn't have ever used cocaine if I wasn't drunk. Drink was definitely the gateway there to cocaine for me. And again, better education around the use of cocaine would have been an essential part of the education there. Drink and alcohol combined, it's not really good. Produces much more toxic compound within the liver, I believe it is, when alcohol and cocaine are being broken down. Someone might throw it into the comments out there, but it's escaped me now off the top of my head. But yeah, definitely cocaine use. Again, I don't think cocaine is the problem. I think it's the prohibition again around education. Cocaine is an extremely potent form of the alkaloid that's within the coca plant, the coca leaf. And if we were to have coca leaf regulated and as an option out there, for the lads in the sports as well, they're saying they're being recommended cocaine instead of beer. I thought that was hilarious. I can't imagine that really ever happening out there, because they're probably drinking beer anyway to kind of cover the fact that they're taking a bit of cocaine in the bathroom. Because that's quite often the case. A fellow will go in, take a few lines, but has to drink a bit of a beer or two outside just because they don't want to cover up. But yeah, I don't think the alcohol is the problem. I think it's the prohibition. If they had the coca leaf there, a fella could take a drink, a bit of coca leaf tea, have a little bit of baking soda in there to activate the alkaloid, to give them a little bit of stimulation, but not that overdosed form of it, which is the potent form of cocaine. It's traditionally been used in that way, again, by indigenous populations in certain parts of the world, Peru and South America and stuff like that. So there's no reason we shouldn't be allowing people here to do that when they're already using a much more potent and dangerous form of this plant. It's the compound within that plant. It's mad. But no, again, I hate to disagree with you, Taffin, but I do. Alcohol ain't the problem, it's prohibition, as usual. But again, I'm biased in that. It would be much less, it would happen less alcohol misuse if weed was legal. Yeah, that's been shown in places too, definitely where weed is, even places where cannabis isn't legal. There's definitely been a trend where the younger generations are kind of shifting towards that over alcohol. So that's definitely probably better education, better access to information. That's pushing that there. Yeah. In comparison, I get you, but it needs a lot of education on cocaine. Don't disagree with you there anyway, certainly. As I say, the education is key. Harm reduction and education go hand in hand. And then alongside of that is decriminalisation, regulation, safe supplies, take it all out of the control of the black market, the organised crime gangs that they say they're so much against. but they say they're against it while also enabling complete control over an incredibly ludicrous, what's that word again? Jeez, not that ludicrous. God, where there's a lot of money. Anyway, I get stuck for those words. The fucking new medication that they threw me on there for the epilepsy. Sometimes the word is there, but it just eludes me. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of money to be made there on drugs because of prohibition. So yeah, that's close off that video there in the background. There is a couple of videos out there that I'll get something out later on. The Dáil had a meeting there. There was a motion on the decriminalisation of the drug user. So there was a debate going on that. I'd seen a couple of clips, seen a few short videos there of different TDs kind of giving their contribution. Somebody was saying there again earlier, who was that? Where's that? I think it would have been Taffin, was it? But there was a TD anywhere up there, one of the Fine Gael ones, and he kind of was saying that harm reduction should be the focused, health-led, and didn't really harp on about criminalisation. There we go, yeah, it was Tunes. Tunes would be good, 8726. Says Paul McAuliffe and Paul Murphy's contribution in the Dáil yesterday are worth a listen. So yeah, as I said, I'll get something put together on that. Might do a little live later on. Let's see what happens, see if we get the chance. It's my small fella's birthday today. He is 4 years old. So we're going to have a party there for him later on today. So yeah, I got to get in and prepare for that. So it might be later on this evening if I get back out here to do a bit of a stream. We see what happens. Hey, what's happening, B-Moon, lad? After all, I'd personally say religion is the dangerous drug they've not mentioned, or they've mentioned yet. They've not mentioned yet. Was religion mentioned? Probably was at some stage. What other comments are out there? That seems like it. Yeah, Taffin says I get you alcohol as its place, but it's just the damage I've seen from it. No, I don't disagree with you there again. Like the alcohol, the damage, it's absolutely insane. But the problem there again is prohibition. It's the only option. You either go out and you get a little bit drunk, or you don't. You know, you go out and you drink some coffee. You get mildly stimulated by some coffee. While the rest of your friends, you know, they're knocking back maybe cocktails or tequilas or whatever the crack might be. So it's again another bit major issue there, prohibition. Like imagine you can go out and you have the option, I'm going to drink some coca leaf tea, you know, I'm going to have maybe a little whatever you might have alongside of that, and you're going to have rather than a very mildly stimulated evening on a coffee, you could have a bit more stimulated, a bit looser too, like, you know, the effects of that alkaloid within the coca leaf. It's obviously a lot more than just stimulation. It's a lot more than just getting coked off your head. Like there's definitely a lowering of certain barriers there, an opening up of the person to be engaging in a conversation, to be a bit more confident. There's definitely some certain effects there that it has, that it can offer alternatively to alcohol. Yeah, Bobby's pointing out there as well that lady earlier, geez, I can't remember the role that she was playing, but yeah, she definitely sounded American. American there for us. Us on the other side of the Atlantic pond. But yeah, that's it's been a good committee meeting so far. Definitely some great contributions given by the speakers. It seems, you know, that the problem here is just policymakers. You know, these meetings have all seemed to have gone a similar way, where the focus should be, drug policy's focus should be shifted towards harm reduction, towards decriminalisation. And it's just the policymakers, like, geez, they're really being dragged kicking and screaming into this one, given the pressure that's been there on them. Do you know, you look at the countless opportunities they had just in regards to cannabis over the years. Luke Flanagan being some of the earlier ones that I can remember, Gino Kenny's. And no, they've just been ignorant. No, drugs are bad. We can't be doing this. Jeez, next we'll be legalising cocaine. Do you know, they come up with all these crazy stories, and try to just, what would you say, discriminate the drug using community as they do there so bloody blatantly in regards to alcohol and substance misuse. It's like, hang on a second, is alcohol not a substance? Yes, it is. Stop separating them. It only hurts the education around the use of substances or the responsible use of substances. Chilbert, what's happening, Chilbert? All going well? I see someone very nearby has recently harvested some Exodus crossed with the psychosis. I'll give him a nudge there to try to send you another photo or two. But I reckon you'll have to travel over to the side of the whole... what's in between us there? Is it the English Sea and that, yeah? The British, yeah, Jesus, my geography's gone all bad. But yeah, you'll have to come over here to Cork to try some anyway. What are we looking at there now? Was there anything else? I just had it on my head. I was something else I was going to bring up, but it's after escaping me. No, it's completely gone. That happens. Right, so we'll start signing off there, and we'll get in about the rest of our day. As I said, we'll try to get on at some stage. Trying to get some videos out of the debate that happened on the motion to decriminalise the drug user in the Dáil, and that should be all. I'll pack up one more little bowl of civil disobedience before we head in. That should be a fun all afternoon, family together, lots of sweets. It's probably not the best thing to be doing here, but should be a good old crack. Get to take off the shoes and run around and amongst the old foam thing and go down the slide. It's great that I have the excuse of have to go in and watch the kids to be able to go in there. Going to be upset in a couple of years going to kids' birthday parties and my kids are all grown up and I can't go in there and, you know, go down the slide and jump into all the balls. I know I'm not the only one out there who does that. Ooh, the wall of civil disobedience contains some guava rida today. A seed that was brought back there by a local grower from Spanibus 24. Some really nice nugs. Don't have one here, just have some ground up buds, so can't share that photo with you, but we will share the bowl of civil disobedience there now in a second. Ah, yeah, that's what I was thinking of, actually. It was the Dáil videos. I was thinking that there was something else, but no, it was the Dáil videos that I was... so I did say that, actually. I just wasn't actually going to show them because I was looking there. A couple of them are a couple of minutes long. And I said I have to go in and get ready. But guys, yeah, until next time out there, guys, stay lit. No, jeez, yeah, keep her lit. Stay blazed. Don't get as blazed as me, though. Forgetting your sign-offs. I'll have to get back into a few more of these 420 news as well. We might stick to the 420 New York time as well, just for the convenience. That's a 920 here. Slán, that's Gaurav Mahagut for joining and commenting along the way. Anybody who's not watching the live and watching the afterwards, fair play for watching this far into the show. Till next time, peace.